Follow Geometry. This is Mrs. LaRue, and we're going to be working on our second algebra review skill, which is going to be solving what's called a quadratic equation. So that's our first little set of vocabulary here. And we're going to do so by using the quadratic formula. You're going to learn in Algebra 2 that there are three, maybe argue 4 ways, if we include graphing, for solving a quadratic equation. We're just going to focus on one of those ways today. We'll worry about the rest when we get to Algebra 2. So the quadratic formula says that the solutions to a quadratic equation, so I'm going to make a fake one here. Notice that the a, the b, and the c are numbers. They're the numbers in front of the x squared, in front of the x, and then that lone constant, that 5 at the end. Our formula is dependent upon our b, our a, and our c. So all we really need to do is locate them and plug them in. Formulaic math is pretty nice because as long as you have the formula down, like if we know that the area of a circle is pi r squared, and somebody tells us the radius is 5, we just do what it says, and we're done. So formulaic math is pretty easy as long as you use it correctly. All right, so let's go look at our process. The first thing we do is we get one side of the equation equaling 0. And it's your choice which side, but I would say be nice to yourself and choose the side that is least complicated or easiest to move. So obviously for this one right here, I'm going to choose to add 2 to both sides instead of moving all the stuff on the left over to the right. And that'll give me 2x squared plus a 7x plus a 5 that equals 0. So my first step is done. Get one side equal to 0. Then I need to identify the a, the b, and the c. So my a is what's in front of the x squared. My b is what's in front of the x. And my c is the constant. Take the signs with them. So I'm going to use lowercase. Doesn't matter whether you use uppercase or the lowercase that's in the formula. So my a is equal to 2, positive. My b is equal to 7. And my c is equal to 5. Done. Now I'm going to substitute those into the formula. So I have to be careful how I read that formula. Although this is a negative sign, I like to say the opposite of b. So if b is positive, like our b is, I will have a negative 7. But if b is negative, then it becomes positive. So don't let this sign right here fool you into thinking that we always have a negative number out front. We have the opposite of whatever b was. Then we do plus or minus. And then under the root, I'm going to give you a couple suggestions. You'll notice right here it says suggestion. Put the b in parentheses. I would even suggest you put not only that in parentheses, but these two as well. It's going to help you avoid making sign errors. And let's talk about that for a little bit. Because we are going to be squaring the b right here, and then we're going to be subtracting 4, and then we have to put 2 more ingredients in here, the a and the c. And we put it all over 2 times the a. So let's go put that stuff in there. All right, we've got the opposite b, plus or minus b squared. B is 7. Minus 4 times a times c. All over 2 times a. Now the reason I tell you to put that in parentheses, because 7 squared is equal to 7 times 7, which is 49. If you don't put the negative 7 in parentheses, it's read as taking the opposite of 7 times 7. And it's read or entered or calculated or evaluated as a negative 49. When really, if we want to square the whole negative 7, to tell our calculator or our brains to do that, we have to put the negative with the 7 in a set of parentheses. Because then when we think of negative 7 times negative 7, we get a positive 49. So regardless of whether your b is positive or negative, again, I put this in your notes, you are always going to have a positive number there. So if you are doing your homework and you do negative b plus or minus the square root, and you have like a negative 9 right here. You're going to go, wait a minute, we have to always have a positive when we square that b. So, now I'm going to go do step 4 already. We evaluate what's under the root. That's going to get a special name, but not in this class yet. So I'd really just go evaluate this. Now you have two options. If your arithmetic's good, you can just say 7 times 7 is 49. I'm just going to go write it over here. Minus, and then 4 times 2 times 5 will be 8 times 5 or 40. And I know that under that root is a 9. If your arithmetic is a little rocky or if the numbers get big, that's when we'll go use our calculator. Okay, so when you use the calculator, again, you just can go up here and you'll do a negative, right? So what I'm going to do is turn my highlighter off here, use my fingertip to go hit that negative sign. Let me clear it off. So I would have a negative. I'm going to get that up there. Negative. Why does it say answer? I don't know. Oh, because I'm using the subtraction sign. We'll have to do this. All right. So under that root, I have in parentheses, I have a 7. And again, I would do parentheses. I'm going to square it. Most calculators have a squaring button. And then I do minus 4. And I put these two in parentheses as well. I just think it's just safe. It gets it nice and organized for your brain and for your calculator. And just hit enter and you'll get the 9. So you do whichever one's more comfortable. But I would go under that root first and evaluate that. And I'm going to do a rewrite now. I have a root, and I had a 9 living under there. That highlighted stuff gave me a 9. All over, and then on the bottom here, I have 2 times 2, which is, as always been, 4. So 4 on the bottom. So, now I need to actually take that root. And today it's going to be a nice perfect square. We talked about those. If you don't get a perfect square, you're doing it wrong today. So notice, if what's under that root is positive, which ours is, it was a root 9, the square root of 9 is 3. So I'm going to be going up 3 and down 3 because of that plus or minus in the formula. And that'll always happen. If you get a positive under that root, you're going to get 2 answers. If you get a negative, you actually don't get any answers that are real. You'll learn something else in Algebra 2. That won't happen with us today either. If what's under that root is a 0, you'll be going up 0, down 0, so you only get 1 answer. All right, so this is where I do what I call branch up. Okay, I'm going to do the addition this way, and I'm going to do the subtraction this way. So all I'm going to do is take my negative 7, I'm going to add 3. Negative 7 plus 3 is a negative 4. I'm going to divide that by 4, and then I will simplify. Boom. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the subtraction. So next up, I'll grab in blue here, I'll do the negative 7. It's turning green now. I'm going to do minus 3. Negative 7 down 3 is a negative 10. I'll divide that by 4. It says branch off. That's what I just did. And simplify. So I simplified negative 4 over 4 and negative 10 over 4 are both even, so I can divide a 2 out of each. And those are my 2 solutions. I'm going to put them in a box and move on to the next problem. So I'm going to move on here to our next problem for a little bit of practice. So let's, again, think of those steps. If you need to look at them, great. But the first thing it said is get one side equal to 0. So before I even start, I'm going to remove 1 from both sides. So I have 2k squared plus 5k minus 12. I'm at negative 11 going down 1 equals 0. Step 1 is done. Step 2 says identify the A, the B, and the C, and take the signs with you. So my A is 2. That's going to go in my formula. My B is 5. My C is negative 12. And then I'm going to follow my formula like a map until I have it memorized. My formula says x is equal to the opposite of b. The opposite of 5 is negative 5. Plus or minus the square root of, and then I like to do parentheses, b squared minus 4 times A, which is 2, times C, which is negative 12, all over 2 times A. That was the next step. Then we said we want to evaluate under the root. You can do so on your calculator or by hand. I'm going to do it on the calculator. Okay, so I'm going to do parentheses 5, close it, squared, minus 4, parentheses 2, and then parentheses and a negative 12, hit enter. And you'll notice I get a nice perfect square under that root. So I'll do a little rewrite now. I've got negative 5 plus or minus the square root. Under that square root, which is highlighted, and I did on my calculator, I got 121. All over 2 times 2, which is 4. The next step said actually take the square root, meaning what is the square root of 121? If it's not nice today, you did it wrong. They'll get ugly in your other levels of math. All right, and in exponential algebra, they got ugly too. But for us, we're just doing a little review here in case we need this skill when we are doing our geometry. So the square root of 121 is a nice 11. So I'm going to get 2 answers because that was positive. I'm going to branch off to get those 2 answers. For my first answer, I'm going to add negative 5 plus 11 gives me 6. I still have to form the denominator. Negative 5 down 11 is negative 16. Still have the 4 in the denominator. Then I'll reduce my fractions, divide out of 2. And 4 goes into 16 evenly. So I'll get a negative 4. And then I have them all lined up here and I box them in. Those are my solutions for x. Actually, for this one, it's k. So it's easy to make that into a k. What that means is if I were to take negative 4, go plug it in here and here on my calculator, and do 2 times negative 4 squared plus 5 times negative 4 minus 11. I'll get 1. Go try it if you don't trust me. I think you should trust me. All right. So I would challenge you to try this one on your own and then go work on the delta math, but I'm going to just do it for you. Step 1, get one side equal to 0. And again, this right side is so much easier to work with. I'm going to line that up underneath its like term, and I'm going to do 31 minus 6, which is 25. These numbers are going to be big. I'm going to be glad that I have a calculator. Negative 6 squared. 6 squared minus 6 squared is a nice 0. Step 1 is done. I got one side equal to 0. Step 2, I need to identify my A, 25. My B, take the sign with it, negative 40. And my C, positive 16. Done. What do I do with those? I plug them into the formula, which says x is equal to the opposite of b. Now my b is a negative 40, so I'll have a positive 40, plus or minus the square root of. I do b squared minus 4ac. So I'm going to put a negative 40 in here, because b was negative 40, minus 4 times a times c. My formula says to put it all over, so a big, long division bar, all over 2 times a, and 2 times 25 is 50. If you were to look at your steps, it's going to say, go under that root, and hop on your calculator, and enter it exactly as you see it. So back over here to my calculator, I'm going to do parentheses, negative 40. I'm going to square it. I'll subtract 4 parentheses 25 parentheses 16, close it, enter. Oh, I got a 0. Let's see how we handle that. So I'm back, I have a 40 plus or minus the square root of 0 all over 50. Although 0 isn't considered a perfect square, it's pretty obvious what the square, sorry, I don't know why that, let's see, whatever. It's pretty obvious what the square root of 0 would be, right? What times itself gives us a 0? and the answer to that is 0. So I'll have the 40 plus or minus 0 all over 50. If I branched off, I do 40 plus 0. This is why we only get one answer when we have a 0 under that root. 40 plus 0 is 40 over 50. But 40 minus 0 would also give me the same thing. So I really only need to do the one branch, and then I simplify. And for me, I'm going to divide a 10 out of both. I only have one answer to box in at the end. I want your homework for Delta Math to look identical to this. I want to see your steps. I want to see you getting it equal to 0. I want to see you identifying your A, your B, and your C, plugging them into the formula, evaluating what's under that root, and then branching off to do the positive and the negative, and then boxing in your solutions before you enter them into Delta Math. So before we put here, remember there's a couple important things. Number one, make sure you get one side equal to 0 first. Another important thing to remember is that your calculator will do what's under the root here, but use those parentheses because there's a difference between what we wrote up there on our calculator. Kind of take a look back at the calculator. There's a difference on my calculator for doing negative 40 squared, which is what I'm supposed to do, versus if I entered it without the parentheses. All right, see the difference right here? So your calculator can only do what you tell it to do. Are you telling it to square the whole thing or take the opposite, what you get after you square? And we want to square the whole thing. So we're going to use parentheses, right? The other thing is the branching off and the simplifying. Other than that, you should be good to go. So peace out and head on into Delta Math, showing all your work on the supplement sheet. If you were absent, you can just show it on a blank sheet of paper and just turn that in. So have a good one. We'll catch you later.